The letter arrived on a morning when hope felt heavier than despair. She stood in the narrow kitchen of her rented room, staring at the last handful of flour in a chipped bowl, calculating how many meals it could stretch into. The landlord had already warned her, 2 more weeks, and she'd be out. Every cafe in town had turned her away. Some said business was slow. Others never even called back. So when she read the words ranch cook needed, remote location, modest pay, immediate start, she didn't hesitate. Remote meant far from the town that had run out of chances for her. Modest pay was still pay. And immediate start meant survival. She packed what little she owned into a single suitcase and boarded a rattling bus that carried her deeper into open land than she'd ever seen before. The ranch sat under a wide, unforgiving sky. Wooden fences stretched endlessly, cattle moved like dark shadows in the distance, and dust clung to everything. The foreman, a gruff man with a weathered face, barely looked at her when she arrived. He pointed toward the kitchen and told her meals were served before dawn and after sunset. No excuses. Cowboys worked hard and ate harder. The kitchen was old but sturdy, iron pans, a long wooden table, shelves lined with jars that needed refilling. She rolled up her sleeves and got to work immediately. Cooking had always been her quiet strength. She could turn simple ingredients into warmth, into something that made people pause and breathe. By sunrise, the smell of fresh bread and stew drifted across the yard. The cowboys filed in one by one, loud and laughing, boots heavy with mud. Some barely noticed her. Others nodded in approval at the food. But there was one man who came in last. He removed his hat before entering, as if the kitchen deserved respect. He washed his hands carefully and waited until everyone else was served before taking a seat near the corner. He wasn't like the others. He spoke only when spoken to. His clothes were worn, but clean. His eyes carried a quiet focus, the kind earned through years of responsibility. When she offered him a plate, he thanked her like it mattered. Over the next few days, she learned the rhythm of ranch life, the early mornings, the aching muscles, the silence that settled after sunset. The cowboys argued, joked, complained. The quiet one listened. When tools broke, he fixed them. When tempers flared, his calm presence softened the room. No one ordered him around, yet no one questioned him either. She assumed he was just another hard-working cowboy, maybe older than the rest, maybe wiser. Someone who had seen enough of life to stop explaining himself. She found herself watching him without meaning to, comforted by his steadiness in a place that felt unfamiliar and harsh. At night, alone in her small room near the kitchen, she allowed herself to feel something she hadn't in months, relief. This job wasn't easy, but it was honest. And for the first time in a long while, she wasn't invisible. She was needed. She didn't know it yet, but stepping onto this ranch had changed her life. The job she took out of desperation was only the beginning. And the quiet cowboy she barely noticed would soon become the center of everything she thought she understood about trust, identity, and belonging. By the second week, she knew every sound the ranch made before sunrise. The groan of the windmill, the distant lowing of cattle, the thud of boots hitting the porch as the men gathered for breakfast. Her hands moved automatically now, kneading dough, stirring pots, setting plates. Yet her attention kept drifting to the same quiet presence. He still arrived last. Always. Never pushing forward, never raising his voice to be heard. While the others joked loudly or argued over coffee, he stood near the door, listening more than speaking. When she passed him a plate, he met her eyes briefly and offered a soft smile, nothing flirtatious, nothing demanding. Just calm gratitude. What puzzled her was how the others treated him. The foreman barked orders at everyone, except him. When a fence collapsed on the north pasture, it was this cowboy the men turned to, not the boss. When a sick calf that was it. No stories. No warnings. No explanations. Over time, he started staying behind after meals, helping carry heavy pots or stacking firewood without being asked. He never entered the kitchen uninvited, always waiting at the door like a guest. When she thanked him, he'd wave it off, saying work was work. One evening, a storm rolled in fast. Wind howled across the plains, rattling the windows as rain slammed into the roof. The men came in soaked and irritable. Tempers flared. 2 cowboys argued over a misplaced saddle, voices rising dangerously. Before she could react, the quiet cowboy stepped between them. "Enough," he said, firm, calm, and low. That single word stopped everything. The men backed off without protest. The trouble didn't arrive loudly. It crept in on polished boots and folded papers, the kind of danger that didn't raise dust or shout across the fields. She noticed it first in the way the foreman's voice tightened one morning, in how the men stopped joking and started whispering. 3 strangers rode onto the ranch just after noon. She glanced at the quiet cowboy. He ate slowly, calmly, as if the words hadn't touched him. That unsettled her more than the news itself. The foreman stood. "No one's going anywhere yet," he said, though his eyes betrayed doubt. "But those men will be back. And they're not asking, they're claiming." That night, the ranch didn't sleep. Men patrolled fences that didn't need guarding. Horses shifted restlessly. The wind carried tension across the fields. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening for sounds that might signal the end of the fragile stability she'd just found. The next morning, the strangers returned, this time with confidence. They gathered everyone near the barn. Papers were spread across a crate. One man spoke about contracts, overdue taxes, and inevitable transitions. He spoke as if the ranch were already gone. Then the quiet cowboy stepped forward. For the first time since she'd known him, he stood in front of everyone. "That's not how this works," he said evenly. The men laughed at first. One of them sneered. "And who are you supposed to be?" She held her breath. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't threaten. He spoke clearly, about boundaries, about filings that hadn't been accounted for, about ownership clauses buried deep in county records. He corrected dates. He quoted figures. He dismantled their confidence piece by piece. The strangers exchanged uneasy glances. "This land isn't for sale," he finished. "And you don't have the authority to claim it." Silence followed, thick and stunned. The meeting was called at sunset, when the heat finally loosened its grip on the land. The cowboys gathered in a loose circle near the barn, boots planted in the dirt, hats pulled low. No one joked. No one wandered off. All eyes kept drifting toward the quiet cowboy, who stood apart, arms folded, face unreadable. She stayed near the kitchen door, wiping her hands on her apron even though they were already clean. Her chest felt tight. Since the confrontation that morning, whispers had followed him. She felt the world tilt. The memories rushed in all at once, him eating last, wearing worn clothes, fixing fences, washing his hands like a guest in her kitchen. All of it suddenly felt different. Reframed. What she'd taken for humility now felt like concealment. "So this was all a test?" someone snapped. "No," he said firmly. "It was a choice." The meeting ended without applause or argument. The truth didn't need defending. It simply existed. One by one, the men drifted away, some nodding, some still shaken. She didn't move. Her feet felt rooted to the ground, her thoughts tangled in disappointment and anger she hadn't expected. He found her later near the stove, staring at a pot that had long gone cold. "You should have told me," she said without looking up. The bus was scheduled to arrive at dawn. The suitcase sat by the door, worn and overfilled, just as it had been the day she arrived. Sleep never came. She lay awake listening to the familiar sounds of the ranch, the distant cattle, the wind moving through tall grass, sounds that had quietly become home. A soft knock broke the silence. She sat up, heart racing. When she opened the door, he stood there alone, hat in his hands, no authority in his posture, only uncertainty. The landowner. The cowboy. The man she thought she knew. "I'm not here to stop you," he said. "I just didn't want you to leave without a choice." She stepped aside but didn't invite him in. She stepped outside as the sun rose over the fields, casting gold across the land. The cowboys nodded as they